Thank you so much for joining us for the Noble Quran. This is session 3 with Dr. Dalton Garris. Dalton, whenever you're ready, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. If you'll take a note of the chat right for a moment, I've written down the email is Quran Study 2022@gmail.com. That might be a little easier for you to handle, to navigate. So let me just do this here. Oh, I first have to share the screen. Share screen. And we have. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Very good. That's now, Derek, you're a big help. Because usually everybody just sort of, yeah. All right, so this is meeting 3, and we're going to be looking at called the Surah of the Cow. It's the longest, it's the longest surah or chapter in the whole Quran. And it also will contain in it, once we get to it, the longest verse in the Quran. And I think, as I mentioned to you last time, that verse has to do with financial statements, financial documents. Now, has anyone had difficulty getting the Quran that we're using if they wanted to get it?
No.
Okay, that's good. All right then. So in that case, I'm looking at something that's, yeah, not much help. Okay. That's my phone, you know. There, now it quit. All right. So it begins with the letters. The first verse is Alif Lam Mim. Alif Lam Mim. And as it says here, well, what it says here is, these letters are one of the miracles of the Quran, and none but Allah alone knows their meaning. Well, this is no longer the case. We now know the meaning, or at least many of the meanings that were absolutely hidden before now. Thanks to a tablet that His Holiness Baha'u'llah wrote called The Disconnected Letters of the Quran. But here's one of the things that it means. Remember, we referred to the number 19. Alif Lam Mim. It's used 9,899 times in this surah, those 3 letters. And that is 521 divided by, guess what, 19. It's everything will be a multiple of 19, you'll see. So, all right. And we started with, it says, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Then he says, this is the book whereof there is no doubt. And for those of you who have the Kitab Yagan, you can find a reference to that at paragraph 224, where he talks about it. Now, we all have the new vocabulary down. And the opening, the cow. Okay. And now can we all see this? Because these are the ones that we're going to look at for the most part. Then let's have a look at, and let me just remind you, sorry to just keep jumping in and out like this, but let me just remind you that when the Quran was compiled, the laws and ordinances were set to the front of the Quran, while the very literary and poetic parts were set to the back, because it was assumed that persons wanted to know the laws first, and also those ones at the back, which actually comprise the shortest surahs in the Quran, are the most difficult to comprehend because they're very abstract. So now we go to 10, and it says here, these are persons he's talking about who refuse to accept, and they are called the doubters. And he says, in their hearts is a disease of doubt, and God has increased their disease. A painful torment is theirs because they used to tell lies. Now, again, we see here a reference to what they do that is in their lives, what sort of deeds and actions and words they use, to whether they can understand the book or not. That makes sense of the words or the statement that no one will be able to touch this book unless that person has clean hands. What that means is that persons who don't have clean hands won't be able to understand it. It'll just be words on a page for them. Oh, they'll get out a few things. Everybody can get something out of it, but they won't get the inner meanings. They won't be revealed. They will remain hidden away from such persons because of the life they had chosen to lead. And this is an amazing thing. It's actually sort of a miracle of the holy words of God when you think about it, that only those who do well in their lives will understand well the teachings of God. Quite interesting. Then we have verses 11 through 13. And when it is said to them, make not mischief on the earth, they say, we're just peacemakers. We're just peacemakers. And 12, verily they are the ones who make mischief, but they perceive it not. And then 13, and when it is said to them, believe as the people, and when it is said to them, believe as the people, followers of Muhammad believe, they say, shall we believe as the fools have believed? Verily, they are the fools, but they know it not. What this refers to is a very common thing that we see, that we observe in life, and that is that the first persons who usually embrace a new religion are those that are marginalized from the ordinary run of life, either because they have a disability or because they just think weirdly compared to the rest of mankind or what, but they just don't seem to fit very well in society. It's not always the case, but most of the time, those are the first ones who receive and hearken to the call of God. As Jesus said, if you were of the world would love his own, but you're not of the world. I have chosen you out of the world, and therefore the world hates and persecutes you. And that's how and why they were able to accept Christ Jesus. What did they have to lose? They didn't have anything to lose, and they had nothing. They were empty in their heart. Their hearts were empty of the things of this world. And so that's why they were, usually speaking, among the very first cohort to embrace the new religion of God. Where do we go from here? 11 to 13, then we jump to 15. God mocks at them and gives them increase in their wrongdoing to wander blindly. Now, what does this mean? Well, it can mean a lot of things, but one of the things that obviously comes to mind is if you choose this road, whatever road you choose, if you choose the road of evil or wickedness, God will increase you in this if this is what you want. He will increase your going on that road as long as you want to go on it until you turn aside from it. And by doing that, of course, it becomes even harder and harder as the deeds, unless something happens to the human being, unless something happens to him to wake him up. Could be the death of a child or a spouse, or could be a war or something like that, some terrible thing, some cataclysmic thing that happens, And maybe that wakes the person up and makes him change, makes him or her change. Okay. That's 15. From 15, we go to 19 and 19. This is quoted in the Kitab Yagan, the Book of Certitude, but basically it says when Muhammad tried to tell them about things, they would thrust their fingers into their ears. Now I know a friend, well, an associate of mine that I see once in a while on my daily walks. He's always studying his holy book, and we got to talking, and we shared many things. And I said, "Why don't you try reading this one?" He says, "Can't. We're not allowed to read anything but our own book." You know, that pretty much ties it, so that you see what that can end with. It ends with something like this: the words, "And we found our fathers walking in a faith, and in our ways do we assuredly follow. And those in their footsteps do we assuredly follow." Those words are used many times throughout the Quran. You'll find it. We'll hit it. So then, moving down, we have here 22. Yeah. God has made the earth a resting place for you, and the sky a canopy, and sent down water from the sky, and brought forth therewith fruits as a provision for you. Then do not set up rivals unto God, while you know, that is, while you understand these things. Okay, earth, heaven, or sky, heaven, sent down water from the heavens, and brought forth therewith fruits as a provision for you. Do you suppose that this could have a meaning other than a physical meaning? After all, it wasn't really necessary for a manifestation of God to come and sacrifice himself, only to tell us about what we already know. Dana, Anna, you have your hand up?
Yeah, yes, excuse me. I am not following where you're reading from.
Oh my, now you tell me. We're on verse 21 now. This is in Surah, the second chapter, the cow.
So we're in the second surah.
Yeah.
And
We've
verse
been in there right along.
And what verse?
Well, the verse I just read, which was 22, verse 22. Do you see it?
I'm looking at it in my book. Verse 22.
Who has made the earth a resting place for you, and the sky as a canopy, and sent down words to that
Thank you
effect?
very much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good,
I was
good.
looking on the screen and I wasn't seeing.
No, what I have here on the screen, and by the way, this is in also on Google Drive, so that we can share this on Google Drive, and it's all up there. What I have on the screen is just some suggestive notes to what the verses can mean. And what I do there is basically, this is very subjective. That is, these are the ones that I thought in my development as a spiritual being, in my study of the Quran, were ones that referred most obviously to meaning that we could understand today. If this is only to mean, for instance, this 22, that water comes down from heaven or from the sky, and we have the earth as a rest, well, we already know that. So that's not really it's not really necessary to send a manifestation of God to say that any And the teenager knows that. So what else could it mean? Well, what is the symbolic meaning of the word earth? It's the earth of the heart to accept and comprehend the words of God. Now, we may know this for those of us who come from a Christian background. We may have read in the four Gospels where Christ Jesus has said, "And from good earth comes good fruit. From good soil comes good fruit. And the rain comes down on it and wonderful fruits." What is he talking about? What are the fruits? Good deeds. He's not talking about fruit trees necessarily. He's talking about good deeds. From a good heart, when it's watered with the water of life, the life of faith from God, comes good deeds. And so it can mean that. That's one of the things it can mean. And we also have therewith fruits as a provision for you. Your good deeds are a provision for you because they lead you to God, the source of all things. But also physical fruits are obviously a provision for you. So that's not lost in that. Then he says, don't set up rivals, don't set up partners to God if you know this, and now that you know. Okay. 23. So this is the test that Muhammad throws down to the unbelievers. If you really think that this is not of God, then produce something like it and call your witnesses if you are of God. If you think you can do it. Well, they just laughed at him. Why did they laugh at him? The persons to whom he was directing the speech, initially anyway, were of his own tribe of Quraysh. And the people of Quraysh were very well known for being the most poetic and the most literate in terms of their sophisticated use of Arabic. And Muhammad could neither read nor write. Couldn't read anything, he couldn't write anything. And they just, when he said that, they just laughed at him. What do you think Muhammad meant, and how do you think they got that wrong in their understanding? Well, he didn't mean empty virtuosity in intellectual pursuits and accomplishments. What he meant instead was the spiritual power, the transforming power of the words spiritually. Yes, I see a hand up. Zoom user, it just says.
Dalton,
Yeah.
you said on 19, you said
Yeah.
it was in the Book of Certitude?
It's discussed
Uh-huh.
in the Book of Certitude in paragraph 175 for those of you who have the newer version, or page 164 for those of you who have the old edition. It's discussed there. They thrust their fingers into their ears.
Okay, that's what I wanted to. That's what I was going to ask.
He talks about that.
Thank you.
You betcha. Let me see if I can lower your hand. There you go. Okay. Getting used to this. You know, there was a study made and it was discovered that persons who have the more advanced degrees are the least likely to be able to do technical things with computers and phones or even a microwave. They did a test using third graders and they said, here's your new microwave. Make the clock stop going like this and set it, and then cook some food in it or something like that. They were able to do it, and the older persons, the ones who were more advanced in their education, had a more difficult time. Isn't that something? Well, all right, where was I? I was 164. Yes, 22. We just did 22. Then 23 is discussed also in the Kitab Yagan, and there is the page number and the paragraph number. And again, we're talking about that right now. Even if they could imitate the style, they could never imitate the spiritual power. The spiritual authority is what is given here. That's the basic, that is the reason that God sends his manifestations, his mirrors of his own light to us to speak, and chooses these mirrors from among our own selves, speaking our own native language ordinarily in the beginning. Then it's spread throughout. It's to renew us spiritually. Because if you think about it, now I want to appeal to your scientific, side of your brain. I don't know which is the left or right or whatever, but I want you to think scientifically now. If you have anything at all, anything that that you look at with your eyes, or hear with your ears, or feel with your sense of touch, it's made by someone or something, and it's made from someone or something. And it eventually will rot. It is not independent. It is a dependent thing. It's a thing that depends upon a certain time and place where it was created, or grew or whatever, and then it will pass on. So then, okay, that's true for the plants because we plant them. But what about for us? Well, we have parents, and they had parents, and they had parents, et cetera, back to the first Adam. And then you see, we have knowledge. Well, where'd we get knowledge? Where did it come from? Oh, well, people back there, they had, yes, and where did they get it? Follow it back to the roots. And what you discover is we are also dependent beings. We are dependent on something else. You can't get out of a chocolate cake ingredients that weren't put in it. They're not going to be in there when you're done baking if you didn't put them in there when you were mixing the mix. It's the same with life. When you look carefully, you will see that somewhere, not in our physical material life, must be where the stuff is coming from that we use as the initial fertilizer to build whatever else we want. And it usually comes from our head. We're laid down, we're on this earth, and then with our mind we think, I know what to do with that. I could turn that into this or that, or this could be food, et cetera, et cetera. That's why it says, that's why when I was teaching in the United Arab Emirates, I said, where is the capital of the UAE? Where is it? Where is the possessions of all the capital of the UAE? Well, they said oil, petroleum, because they're big, that's the source of most of their wealth, or something else. And finally, the woman students got it right away. This is the capital. This is the wealth of the country right here. Right here. And that's why we call it decapitating, I guess. And so what's this? Labor. Here's your capital, here's your labor. All right then. But no, this is very useful to understand this. 25. And give glad tidings to those who believe and do righteous good deeds, that for them will be gardens under which rivers flow. Every time they will be provided with a fruit therefrom, they will say, this is what we were provided with before, and they will be given things in resemblance. And they shall have therein purified mates or wives, and they will abide therein forever. I'm glad they stuck in the word mates, because it wouldn't just be wives, because I don't think I'd want to go to a heaven that's just a men's club. So, and they will abide therein forever. Forever is an interesting word. Eternity is an interesting word. It doesn't mean time beyond counting. It means no time. There isn't a time, nor is there a place. So how do things happen? They happen by the revelation of God. At the point that God reveals something. It exists. And it exists. So we learn, for instance, from this, that even after we depart this life and go into the next life, manifestations of God will be announced and presented to us. And each and every time that happens, we have an opportunity to embrace the image of God, the face of God, or to ignore it, no matter what world in which we live. Oh, hi. Okay. So then we have down here, again, with 27. This has to do with covenant breaking. Those who break Allah's covenant after ratifying it and sever what God has ordered to be joined. And then there's a big thing in parentheses here that we'll skip over. And do mischief on earth. It is they who are the losers. This speaks of covenant breakers, and we can speak here of covenant breakers in a general sense. Those who promise to do something and then deliberately and knowingly don't do it. Not just that they forgot or they, but they promised to do something. For instance, it was recently promised by one of the world leaders that there was no intention of attacking another country. Then the country was attacked. All right, so it can mean that, but it can also mean with relation to God. If you make a promise to God and then you don't keep it, are you likely to be trustworthy? If a person can't keep a promise that is made to God, maybe that person can't keep any promises for whatever reason. It could be because of wickedness, or it could be just doesn't have the executive capacity to carry out what he says, he or she says or asks. So that's something to keep in mind. Then he says here in 28, I'm going to give that even though we skipped to 29 here. 28 is, he's saying to them, how could you just believe in God, seeing that you were dead and he gave you life? Then he will give you death. Then again will bring you back to life. Do you suppose this confused the persons in the 7th century that heard these words? When we are dead, we are brought back to life. Our bones are reassembled. And this is not, of course, what Muhammad meant. And so when he heard that, he sarcastically said, are we wearied out with the first creation, yet they're in doubt as to a second creation? No, that's not what I meant. Sometimes the manifestation of God is actually a little bit amusing in the responses that are given. Not very often, but sometimes. "29, look at this. He it is who created for you all that is on earth, that is everything that you understand, as well as what's on the physical earth. Then he rose over towards the heaven. Heaven of what? His knowledge. That's where his knowledge comes from. And made them 7 heavens. 7? How do we get 7 heavens? Oh, I'm in 7th heaven. We've heard that since we were kids, or at least some of us have. What do you suppose 7 heavens? Why 7? Okay. How many manifestations of God are referenced in the Bible? Does anyone know? Well, there are 6. Think about it. Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Christ. There's 5. 6, Muhammad. And 7, the Bab. Each one is either described fully or foretold in the Bible. After Muhammad, or actually after Christ Jesus, Muhammad and the Bab are described in the book of Revelations. That's why it says that the earth was made in 7 days or 6 days, and then God rested from his work. Then there was a seventh. Now that could be either the Bab or Baha'u'llah, depending upon how it's counted. I'll leave that to you to affirm that in your own minds, which one you are most comfortable with. It could have been that on the seventh day, he rested from his work after that, and that could have been the Bab, which means the gate. As Christ Jesus said, and I believe Luke, and he who comes by way of the gate, the same as the shepherd and the sheep, a shepherd of the sheep, and he who comes by any other way, the same as a thief, a liar and a thief. I don't have the reference for that, but it's in Luke, and I'll dig it out for next time. I should have a Bible in front of me so I don't stumble around this way. But then you see the 7 manifestations of God that are referenced in the line of Abraham. Now, what about Buddha and Krishna? Well, that's another line. That's the Ganges Valley, Ganges River Valley, and there's another line. And in the North America, the Americas, North and South, there were other lines of manifestations that were sent. Until finally, by 1844, every people had received at least one manifestation of God telling them about a great day where all mankind would be united. Okay, so that's where the 7 comes from, the 7 heavens. He made them 7 heavens. Why are they called heavens? Each one represents what? It represents salvation. And it also, of course, represents, if they are not accepted by the persons, a woe or a hell. Because it has authority to either confirm you or condemn you, depending upon your relationship to it. You're free to choose. Whosoever desireth, let him turn aside from this counsel, and whosoever desireth, let him choose the path to his Lord. Where Christ said, he who hath an ear, let him hear. Then we have 30 through 38. This is an interesting thing. It talks about the creation of human beings, the creation of the soul of man. And I'm not going to go all through it. You can, and I'm sure you will, no doubt you will. 34 refers to they use the word iblis here, iblis or iblis, which is the word for Satan. And so the devil refused to bow down to mankind and said, look, mankind is made of wet mud and clay. And I'm made of something much greater than that. I'm made of fire. What about it? So he made man of a higher station. And then as we read through this Quran, and as we read in the other holy books, Satan will say, give me respite until the time of the end. And God says, you are respited. He says, during this time, Satan says, I will try to fool and trick your servants into following me. And God says, only those who disbelieve in me and wish to follow you can follow you. Only those who let you in their hearts will follow you. Otherwise, they will be clear of you. Okay, I'm full of all these nasty tangents, but how many of you remember either reading or seeing the movie or the story Dracula? Anyone remember seeing that or reading the book? I read the book, man, it was scary. It's just creepy. What do we know about the story about Count Dracula and the vampires? They can't come in your house unless what? You invite them in. You have to invite them in. And when Mr. What's his name? I forget his name, but he was the one who was asked to come up there to Count's castle to organize his library. Dracula stood back and said, "Come in by your own free will." He didn't say, "Welcome, come on in." He said, "Come in if you want to." And guy didn't know what he was talking about, so he came in. Then he found out. So it was the same kind of thing. These Transylvanians and the Romanians and Hungarians, etc., were referring to the devil cannot own you unless you allow him to own you. You have to invite him into your heart. Then evil will come from it. Interesting. Huh? Well, to me it was. Believe, now we go to where? 41, yes. We're right here now, friends. Let me see if I can let me do that for you. It might be a help. Quran is a confirmation of whatever God has sent down in the past. And believe in what I have sent down, confirming that which is with you. And be not the first to disbelieve therein. And buy not with it, that is my verses, some small price, and fear me and me alone. This is said to us by the manifestations of God. These things that we give you are mighty. They are precious because they represent the source of your salvation. Don't sell them for things of this world, for gold or for something else to satisfy your appetites, your physical appetites. And most of the things that we do, we have two things in this world, wants and needs, and sometimes they get all intermingled. And we know that many things that we need become a want on their own, and we start becoming, for instance, beyond like eating good, nourishing food, we want entertainment food, or we become a gourmand. And this is, of course, going to be bad for our body, and eventually it may be bad for other things too, as it creates an appetite, and it increases the appetite as we answer this appetite. So that's just one little example. He said, don't sell my holy words for some paltry price. Didn't Christ say, do not throw pearls before swine? Something like that. Does that mean the same thing? I'm not sure. You think about it and tell me. So then that's 41. Now we have from 42, a direct instruction as to how to act. Let's see 42. Mix not truth with falsehood, nor conceal the truth. Don't toy with the truth, my mother used to say. You're toying with the truth. Is this a new book? No, it's not a new book. New to me, but it's not a new book. Did I answer your question? No. What you meant was, did you just buy this book? But I didn't answer that. I pretended to understand you in a different way and answered you in a different. I'm toying at the truth. Of course she meant, did I buy the book? Is this a new book? That's what she meant. We used to, we all sort of play around with this when we're children and a little bit when we're adults too. How do I look? Great. I've never seen you look better. What are you going to say? Moderation in all things. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings. You don't confront people. It's maybe, okay. Excuse me, I'll be right back. Black tea with cardamom. Okay, this is a direct instruction. Mix not truth with falsehood, nor conceal the truth. What do we know about most of the things that politicians say, if not all, if like 99.44%? There'll be one little piece of truth in there, and around that will be woven all this other things. For instance, one politician may say, he voted against the common good. He voted against HR Measure 4213. Well, yes, because there was also a stipulation in there that meant that we would cut taxes on the rich. And I didn't want to vote for that. Y'all are well off enough as it is. But that won't come up. He voted against this. And the purpose is to hurt the other human being there. Purpose of it. There's lots and lots of ways to mix truth with falsehood. So it gives us something to really think about. Okay, any hands up right now? Do I see any hands? Participants, 25 mute. Okay, well, unmute yourself and yell out if I don't see your hand, because what I'm looking at is the page and I only see five persons on this, on the open page of the gallery. Okay, then we have 45. Patience. And seek help in patience. How do you seek help? By being patient. How does being patient help you? We can all imagine how patience helps us. On a personal level, keeps us calm. And also we know that all the messengers of God have told us that there is a reward for those who are patient, beyond just being able to work through the problem that you're working through at the moment. Because most of the problems that we don't make for ourselves, that is the problems that come from life, a death in the family, a war, a famine, something like that, the loss of our funds, they are sent by God to educate us. All this is about all this is about the maturation of the soul. We're given a body in which to grow a soul. A man told me that in 10th grade, and they were the wisest words that I received up to that point. You're given a body in which to grow a soul. So then it says, seek help and patience. And truly, it is extremely heavy and hard, except for true believers in God. It's going to be hard for anyone else, because the ones who believe in God know from where these things come from, where our tests and difficulties come from, and why they came. Whereas those who don't believe in God may have a much more difficult time unless they are grounded in a good philosophy that they have learned since childhood. And then they might be okay that way. But mainly we're talking about anger management, aren't we? And things like this. Not losing our temper. What's your temper? What is your temper? I'll show you. See this? This knife has temper, therefore it holds its edge and can cut and can do useful things. What happens if it gets heated up, red hot? What happens to its temper? It loses it. It becomes soft and won't cut anything. And that's because in the same way, if we get hot under the collar, as we used to say, or heated up with anger, we lose our temper. 46 is referenced in the Kitab Yagan for those of you who are having it. They are those, that is the patient ones, who are certain that they are going to meet their Lord and that unto him they are going to return. Then 48. Now 48 is pretty rough stuff. When a person shall not avail another, fear the day when a person shall not avail another, nor will intercession be accepted from him, nor will compensation be taken from him, nor will they be helped. Now, I referenced here and I wrote it down, the Law Ifuad, which can be found in the tablets. Let me see, I'll go get the book. It's right here. It's a Baha'i book, and it's called The Summons of the Lord of Hosts. And the Law Ifuad is one of the tablets in there, and it's found in the book. If you want to note it, you can also pull it down online from Baha'i Reference Library, or probably just put Law Ifuad, L-A, what does it say here? LAWH hyphen I hyphen FU apostrophe AD, Law Ifuad. And this was written to a gentleman named Fuad, who was revealed by Baha'u'llah, describing to him what happens to the evil, three particularly evil persons, what's going to happen to them. He foretells their future and foretells what happened to them. Two of them had already passed on, and one was still not passed on. Basically, when you look at this, you will read in there actual references to the person wanting to be saved. He says, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. If you don't punish me for the evil deeds that I have done to your people. Well, do we own anything in this life? Do we even own our bodies? We have rights to our bodies, but what sort of rights are those? Well, we are leaseholders of our body, and we are leaseholders of everything we see. It's under contract to us. But after our time in this life is done, there is nothing in this life, including our body or anything, that we can take into the next life. We're not freeholders, we're leaseholders. So it was kind of ridiculous for this man, Fuad, to have said, not Fuad, but the one that was being discussed in the Lawi Fuad, to say, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. What is it that God does not own already? Can I call for my friends to help me? Can I call? Maybe they can help me. They'll speak good words about me. No intercession will be accepted from you this day. And in another place it is said, and I'm not really sure how to understand it perfectly, that when we leave this life, there will be around our neck a book, and the book will have in it all our deeds. Now, those persons who receive the mercy of God will have their evil deeds screened from them, so they won't see them. And those who don't would receive only God's justice. That's all. Justice. They won't receive any other punishment, but just paying back for what has been paid. So that's all. And they will see what they did. That's pretty scary stuff. Now, 49 to 75 is the story of Moses and his followers. So from 49, remember when we delivered you from Pharaoh's people, who were afflicting you with a horrible torment, killing your sons and sparing your women, and therein was a mighty trial from your Lord. Do we know that story? We get it every year with what's his name? What is his name? I always forget about it. Anyway, the 10 Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille's big movie that he made.
Charlton
We see it around Easter time. It'll come up soon, right? What's the name of the fellow who played Moses?
Was it Charles Heston?
Charlton Heston, that's it, yes. Of course, the movie wasn't completely accurate because it would have maybe taken away some of the drama. For instance, Hedy Lamarr played the Queen, and in fact, she became a believer. And the other thing was that the magicians, according to the reference we have from the Quran, and we have no reason to doubt it, this is the word of God, every word of it. According to the Quran, those magicians that tried to do a work that was greater than Moses, shall we throw down or you throw down? You throw down first, Moses said. And they threw down, and with smoke and everything, they made snakes. And then Moses threw down his rod, and his rod consumed their snakes. They all became believers according to the Quran. And Pharaoh said to them, become you believers in Moses before I give you permission? Surely I will punish you. I will crucify you and cut off your hands and feet on opposite sides. In other words, right hand, left foot, or left hand, right foot. They said, no harm to us. That only harms the body. We've seen that he is from God, and we believe. So then you have things like that. Those were the actual facts of it. We didn't see. You don't get from the Quran where in the movie, Yul Brynner comes in with his elbows behind his back and he's holding a sword and he's ready to kill the queen. And she says, before you kill me, show me the blood of Moses on that sword. And of course, he sits down, lost everything. There are a lot of mysteries in this that I don't think we have completely dug out, and maybe never will, probably never will. Among the things he said is we led you across the sea, we parted the seas from you. Maybe it was as we see in the movie where you see the great things coming up and they walk through the way like that. It could also have been a function of tidal, a tidal bore, what's called a B-O-R-E, I think, B-O-A-R, bore. It means a rushing in of the tide. In other words, there were mud flats or clam flats, and they were open because of where the moon was, et cetera, et cetera. And they were able to get across. But when the Pharaonic people tried to go after them, the people of Pharaoh tried to go after them, the waves of the flood of the changing of the tide came in, and they weren't able to escape. Now, this has happened before, actually. This has happened. You've all heard of the Bay of Fundy up in, when is that? It's in Newfoundland, isn't it? They have a 40-foot tide, 40 feet. And there are other places in the world where tides are known to come in like this.
The Bay of Fundy, is
Hmm?
between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
Oh, I'm sorry, New Brunswick and
Okay.
Nova Scotia. Silly me. I'm always thinking New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Yeah, the Maritimes. Okay, thank you very much. I've never seen it. Would like to sometime.
It's amazing. It's absolutely stunning to see it. I'm from Nova Scotia, so I've seen it a number of times.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's amazing.
And then he says in 57 here, where are we? We're 57. We shaded you with clouds and sent down on you al-manna. The word is actually manna was selwa, which means bread of heaven, the bread of heaven. We sent down onto you the bread of heaven and quail, saying, eat of the good and lawful things we have provided for you. And they rebelled and said, we can't eat just one food. What is this food that, well, according to one scientific piece of research, there was a dew that would fall, and that dew, if you got up early, you were able to gather things that, little balls of carbohydrates. They would become carbohydrates because there was something in the air, and they were able to form carbohydrates. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen that source anywhere else, but I've read that a long time ago, and it seems reasonable to suspect it, but that's not the point. The point is, what is it that comes? What is the bread of heaven? What is the bread of heaven? The teachings of God. Make you walk straight, make you do the correct thing, do the right thing. Yeah. And I also gave you quail. Well, I don't know what the symbolic meaning of quail is. But they're good to eat, I suppose. I've never had them. And eat of the lawful things which we have provided for you. And they did not wrong us, but they wronged themselves. In other words, we didn't wrong the Jewish people. They wronged their own selves. They went against what we gave them. Isn't it true that they said, well, we want a king like other kingdoms? And God said, I speak to you directly through the cloud, Moses said to them. No, we want a king, and that was King Saul. Isn't that correct? Again, spiritual discipline. If you look at verse 61 in here, see if you can grab 61. And you see, or where it says, we cannot endure one kind of food. What does food mean here? Probably law, one kind of law. We want to go back to our old ways. We did a lot of things that we like doing. They were entertaining, and you're not allowing us to do it. We have to follow the strict discipline that you've given us. Now there's another one. Jump back up to verse 59, which is on the same page, and I'm going to read it. Those who did wrong changed the word from that which had been told to them for another. So we sent upon the wrongdoers a punishment from the heaven because of their rebelling against God's obedience. Now let's have a look at that. Let's take this apart a little bit. Those who did wrong, evil persons, changed the word from that which had been told to them. What does that mean? Well, it could mean two things. They physically changed it if it were being written down, or what else? They misapprehended it, deliberately misapprehended it, and knew that they were doing so. They knew what it meant, but they deliberately misapprehended it so that they could mock at him. See, did you hear that? He says we're going to be born again. Can you imagine it? Ha, ha, ha. Okay. And that from which had been told to them for another. So we sent upon the wrongdoers a punishment. And what do you suppose the punishment would be for that? That they wouldn't be able to understand any of it. They wouldn't be able to get inside it. From the heaven again is knowledge of God because of their rebelling against God's commandment, against God's obedience. Well, this is directly says if you don't follow God's teachings, he's not going to teach you anything. It's not going to happen that way. If you go into the third grade and you don't believe in your third grade teacher that she's telling you the truth, you're not going to learn anything from that person. What else do we have? Then he says this in 62, very interesting. Verily, those who believe and those who are Jews and Christians and even Sabians, which are persons who existed before, we don't really know much about their origin, but apparently they were polytheists. They believed in many gods. But whoever believes in God in the last day and does good deeds, shall have their reward with their Lord, and on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. They won't lose it. They won't lose it. So if you have a friend who who failed to come to a confession with God, but he was a good person and lived a saintly life according to everything that you were able to observe, don't worry. This person is not lost. He will have he or she will have a habitation with God. Remember, the rain falls down from heaven, and everything gets wet and nourished from this rain. Whether you're good or evil, it falls on you. So God is very generous this way, very generous. Then we have in 63 a reference to the 10 Commandments. We took your covenant and we raised you above you the mount. We raised above you the mountain. That's kind of hard to do physically. What could it mean? A mountain would be, for one thing, the teachings of God. There would be a mountain of belief. And what do we know about a mountain? It's solid. It doesn't move. It doesn't move. So what this means is that we will give you these laws. And in fact, the laws of Moses were so powerful that there is not one civic code anywhere in the world that doesn't have some semblance of the 10 Commandments within it. Just think of that, all over the world. After all this time, they seem to have worked fairly well and do work fairly well. So, in fact, Moses' teachings were so powerful compared with what had gone before, among the Abrahamic people. He gave them specific laws and taught with history. He said this, this, and this, and this. He was specific. He didn't just exhort them to good deeds. He said, you're not going to do this, you are going to do that. So that's why it says in the book of Genesis that the sun was made on the fourth day. Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses. The fourth day was Moses. And why does it say the sun was made? Because the power of Moses, the teachings that Moses received from God was so great as to illuminate the entire world, just as the sun illuminates our world. Thus it was said, the sun is made on the fourth day. Isn't this fantastic? The first time I realized this, I fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. I got spots in front of my eyes. "65, I'm going to make it makes a reference here to monkeys. So that's why I wanted to say it. In the matter of the Sabbath, we said to them, be you monkeys, despised and rejected. In other words, clever animals with no soul. Yeah, you're very clever. It's empty cleverness. Doesn't earn you anything. Okay. Now, at the bottom of the page, for those of you who have this translation, you will see there a reference to footnote 1, which pertains to verse 262, which is just above here on the previous page. 62, verily, those who believe and are Jews and Christians. These persons here, this is the kind of nasty thing that we come across sometimes. Whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will never be accepted of him. And in the hereafter, he will be one of the losers. Okay, what's the word Islam mean? Yes, right. That's right. Islam means giving up your will for the will of God. It's not a brand, it's a process. Here it's used as a brand. If y'all don't follow us, our version, our cult, our sect, then you're wrong. And we see this everywhere. We see this everywhere. Look at the great division between Orthodox Christians and Roman Catholics. And what's it about? Very little, actually. But there it is. And later in the Quran, it will say, they've gone all their separate ways, each one proud of the way that they have chosen for themselves. All this is without permission of God. So yes, be careful when you read that. In a way, it's true, directly true. Yes, Islam means sacrificing your will to the will of God and be willing to follow him. Okay, well, Christians believe in Islam in that case. They're Muslims because they've sacrificed their will to what Christ revealed. Jews to what Moses revealed. Buddhists, et cetera, et cetera. So it works out that way. So then finally, we had here 74. And after that, that is the things that we talked about. Your hearts became hard and became as stones, or even worse in hardness. And indeed, there are stones out of which rivers gush forth. I don't know what the mysteries are that are contained in this. The only thing I can think of is where it says is where it discusses Christ turning the water into wine, the wine of astonishment, the wine of faith, the wine of true belief, which makes your soul happy and gay, like a drunk person is happy and gay. But stones from which water gushes forth. It's interesting. Yes. And then he said before this, thus we bring in 73, it says, therefore, thus God brings the dead to life and shows you his proofs and evidences so that you may understand. Finally, 75, and I think we're just about out of time, have a few more minutes. Do you covet that? It seems that I don't know who's being addressed here. It could be that Muhammad is being addressed directly by God. Do you covet that they will believe in your religion in spite of that a party of them used to hear the word of God, then they used to change it knowingly and understood it not? And again, this is a reference not just to changing the literal word, that is taking it down wrong and saying this is of God, but it means misinterpreting it. His Holiness Baha'u'llah explains in the Kitab-i-Gan on page 87 or paragraph 94. He says, such things are being done today. He says, this also means all those treatises and teachings that the Muslim clerics and mujtahids and others are producing each year, their dissertations and their theses and their fatwas. They come up with a different one each year, when in fact, the word of God means one and the same thing for all of them. But this is not their intention. Their intention, remember, we talked last time about the difference between real truth and ideology. And what is it that truth wants to do? It wants to inform. It wants to instruct. What does ideology want to do? Grasp and maintain power. That's what it wants to do. That's what ideologies do. To seek, grasp, and maintain power. You can look it up, as Casey Stengel used to say. All right, it's 5:37. I have something like that. We have until 5:45. Let me get this. I'm going to take this down now. It's available in the Google share. What is it called? Google. Anyway, that place I told you about earlier. You know, when we get old, the afternoon gets a little hard to remember everything. Someone told me once, it's not that our memory is going, it's that we stuffed so many things in there, we can't find anything anymore. I'll accept that.
Dalton, if you can stop the share screen, and then I think Derek has a question for you.
Okay. And let me open this up. How do I get it all open? Interesting. Yeah. Oh, maybe you go down here. No, no more share. Your screen is paused. Stop share. Aha, there we go. Now, gallery. Now, yes, now I might be able to be of some use. Who's got a hand up? Okay. Is that you, Charlene? Did
No,
you have your hand
Derek.
up?
We have Derek first.
Okay, Derek.
Yeah, my question concerns if you say Islam, which does mean submitting to the will of God, and a Muslim is one who submits to the will of God, then the question or what the question or the way it goes is, then either who are the actual Muslims, the true Muslims, or is it that if you submit to the will of God, whatever path that takes you on is your path?
Well, it's not necessarily your path. You're trying to find God's path. And if you follow God's path, that is, if you do things that God allows and you don't do things that God does not allow, then you have subsumed your will to the will of God. And so he will walk with you and he will teach you of his ways. As Christ said, take of me and learn of my ways, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Saying this was he who was about to be crucified. So different kind of thing. What I'm just trying to make one thing. I remember going into a mosque on Friday. Immediately as I got in the door, it said, "Are you Muslim?" No, we're not Muslim. I'm a Baha'i. That's the name, the Baha'i. Men and women and children have died for this, to be able to say that. So I'm not going to say I'm a Muslim. But in another way of speaking, there was a man who was with me while I was working at the University of Florida, and he was from Iran, and we really like each other. And he called me a true Muslim. He said, you're a true Muslim. So does that answer your question or pull out
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you?
it does. But I was just thinking about how I know a lot of Muslim people will say that if you actually submit to the will of God, yeah, at least that's how they look at it, that
Mhm.
you would read the Quran, see that it is the word of God, and become a Muslim as opposed to staying
Right.
Christian or Jewish.
Right. Then you come upon the problem that the whole there are two major cosmologies. One is Shia and one is Sunni, and they don't agree with each other. So which one is following the will of God, the Shias or the Sunnis? There's no way to pull this out because His Holiness Muhammad didn't leave a will and testament. This wasn't done in religious history until the coming of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. Who else? Can't tell if that's, oh no, that's not a, okay, from, I see here. Here's a chat, strange, let's see. We've been to many mosques, no one has ever asked if oh, that's because you didn't appear on Friday during ordinary Muslim service. If you come any other time of the day, you come for afternoon prayers or anything like that, no one's going to stop you. Everybody's welcome. And I saw that when I was in Abu Dhabi. But if I were to come on Friday morning at the regular time where they have the actual Muslim services, they wouldn't let me in unless I said that I was a Muslim. I mentioned that last week too. I thought, well, I could get around it by saying, I recognize that His Holiness Muhammad is the prophet of God and the seal of the prophets, and that the Quran is the word of God, and that there's only one God. But that's kind of toying with the truth, isn't it?
Hey, Stuart.
Yeah, so to carry on that discussion, all the religions of the world pretty much have that same ideology of, if you read our writings, then you'll recognize, and you deepen in those writings, that you'll recognize that this is from God, and that then you'll become one of us. And that's very true. And we just simply believe that there's a progression through, and that the latest is the Bab and Baha'u'llah, and that they encompass and encapsulate everyone and bring everyone in together, right? So it's just awesome to see that commonality in the various religions, but then to have a different point of view that says, yes, you're right, but take a look at this.
Yeah, right. The Christians have the same problem, don't they, with the words, I am the Alpha and the Omega. Who's the I? Who's the I there? Is he speaking as Christ Jesus or the appointed messenger of God for that day? It's God speaking. I am the Alpha and the Omega. It's not always obvious. Thank you very much, Stuart. That
Hey,
was
everybody.
very useful.
Everybody, thank you so much. Dalton, thank you so much. We will see you all again next week. The recording will be on the YouTube page, so please look for it there. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Aloha,
Neda.
aloha for those who do
Bye.
that.
Thank you, Neda.
Blessings to all of you. Thank you for being here. It's very useful, I think, to know
Bye-bye.
these things.